Welcome back, guys, and today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to talk about a film that is in theaters right now, but to do that, I wanted to bring on a special guest. I am bringing on Alicia Malone. You guys might know her from Filmstruck. You might know her from Indie Movie Guide, and the author of Backwards and in Heels. How are you doing today, Alicia?
I'm really good. How are you doing?
I am excellent. I'm ready to talk about Sofia Coppola's sixth feature film, The Beguiled.
Yes, I really enjoyed this film. I cannot wait to see it again and just dissect it after watching it once, because kind of you let it flow over you, and then I want to sit down and really study it again.
Yeah, I felt the same way. And now this is, of course, a remake of the 1971 Clint Eastwood film, which I haven't seen going into this movie. Have you seen that? Can you offer any sort of insight? How does it compare?
I have, and the basic story is the same. It's a women's boarding house in the South during the Civil War. They find a Yankee soldier and take him in, and that soldier in the original is played by Clint Eastwood, but it is quite different in terms of the perspective. So the 71 version is very much told from his perspective, and his character, who's played by Colin Farrell in the Sofia Coppola version, is much more predatory in the 70s film than the Colin Farrell character was. So I really like the switch up of the perspective being more female, and it is definitely more about women, and having the Colin Farrell character actually being quite likable and charismatic, and so you start to like him as well before the twist comes.
Now, the reason that I wanted to bring you on to this is not just to promote your upcoming book, but I really felt like this isn't really a movie that I felt comfortable just sitting and giving my thoughts on. This is a very complex film that seemingly seems very simple. I feel like some people could go into this movie and be like, well, that was kind of boring, but I really feel like there's a lot to dig into with this film.
Really, there really is, and I know there'll be multiple takes on it, but as far as I'm concerned, what I really got from it was that it shows femininity in all different forms. It's also a power struggle between male and female, and there's so much going on with the history as well, but when it comes to the portrayal of women in the film, you've got several different versions. You've got the youngest girl who really sees the Colin Farrell character almost like a father figure. You've got the Elle Fanning character, Alicia, her name is, and she's young and she's kind of starting to learn how to use her sexuality. She's learning the power that her body can have, but she doesn't really know what she's doing, so it's like she's play acting, pretending to be a woman. Something
that I thought was interesting about that, I don't mean to cut you off, but the word beguiled means to charm or enchant somebody, and I really feel like with Elle Fanning's character and Kirsten Dunst's character, I feel like that they both are charming Colin Farrell, but in two totally opposite ways. Elle Fanning's seems a lot more sinister, and whereas Kirsten Dunst is more doing it for love. And I thought that was a very interesting take. And The Beguiled is actually one of my favorite titles of a movie this year. I think it's so, even though it is a remake, I still think it's such a great use of that word.
Yeah, and it's based on a book as well, and I agree it's different versions of what that means, and I think, the Elle Fanning character, she is trying to use her charms and beguile him, and then the Kirsten Dunst character, at first, she's not so sure about him, she's a little bit older, she's someone that you can tell has kind of given up on the idea of finding love, probably doesn't feel much like a woman, and then he comes in and he starts to really charm her, and he beguiles her, and she starts to think maybe this could be love, this could be marriage. And then you have the Nicole Kidman character, who's the matriarch figure, and she is both trying to protect everyone, as well as you can see that she's really trying to hold on to her sexuality, and she really wants to be seen as a sexual object still, even though she's older than the rest. And it really speaks to that idea of, with women, how you feel like as soon as you reach a certain age that you're pushed aside for the younger girls coming up behind you. So there's so many dynamics going on, and that's what I love about her movies.
I also feel like another thing that was very subtle is there's a lot of times in this movie that the girls are either playing outside or doing their chores, and you would hear like cannon fire like a mile away. And I really thought that painted this sort of vignette of how this seemingly high class society in the school. They even mentioned very earlier in the film that all the slaves had left, and you can see all the overgrown shrubs and all of that. I really feel like it painted this picture that the Civil War, it doesn't matter how much money you had or how poor you were just as much as part of this war as everybody else is, because it's in your backyard. And I really appreciated that aspect of this movie.
Yeah, and you can feel the isolation, that they're all alone. Also, that cannon fire works almost like a ticking clock. There's a war going on in the background, and you have a feeling at any moment it could just descend on their nice little utopia that they've got going on. And also, of course, the war plays into big effect when it comes to what does an enemy mean. I mean, technically, Colin Farrell is from the other side of the war, so he is an enemy. But as they learn, things aren't quite that black and white.
From a certain point of view, Colin Farrell's not really that bad of a guy in this movie. Like, he's definitely not like a great person, but towards the end of this film, and I don't want to spoil, he does some things that seemingly could seem like he's the bad guy. But I was like, if you watch this movie from his point of view, like, I can't even imagine what's going through his mind right now.
Yeah, because he becomes quite quickly, a captive there, and I love the way he plays his role. I think Colin Farrell is such an underrated actor because he gives so many subtle dimensions to his character where at first he's, he just wants to get back to the war, he's trying to get better, and then he enjoys being with all these women, and then he wants to get out as quickly as he can, and then it takes another turn. And it's shot so beautifully as well. I mean, I think that Sofia Coppola is so great at creating a mood and an atmosphere, and this is really gothic, sexy, it's thrilling. I love the mist in the trees. It just looks so beautiful.
Yeah, I like the word sexy because it really is. Like, even though these girls are in these very elaborate, thick dresses and things like that, especially Elle Fanning's character is able to portray this kind of seductress. And I think that all the women in this movie do such a great job. I think performances across the board are really excellent. That's one of my favorite things leaving this movie. I was like, dang, everybody did such a good job.
That's right, and like all the girls together worked so well, their different dynamics. I love the scene when they're at their first dinner, when they have made dinner for Colin Farrell's character, and they're sort of almost fighting over who did what and trying to impress him, and there's so much at play there. And then with Elle Fanning's character, again, it's like she's playing at being a seductress, but she doesn't really know what that means just yet, and she doesn't know how dangerous that can be until later on. Yeah,
she has this nice blend of being a seductress and that kind of naivete to her that she doesn't really know. She's of that age where she doesn't really know how dangerous this could be, especially since they mention on earlier in the movie that one of the little girls that says like, oh, I hear all the Union soldiers are like raping all of these Southern girls. And Elle Fanning's like, no, don't listen to that. And I'm like, that definitely could happen. You're playing with fire a little bit here.
Exactly, and that's another thing, where that Sophia explores about being a woman is this danger, which is unfair. It's an unfair danger that we have that, if men are left alone for a long time, that could make women prey, like in the war. But I like the way that she played it out with all those different characters. It's also different from the 1971 version in that they didn't do the character of the maid. As you said, that very early on, they say the slaves have all gone. And I know that was a contentious issue because it was the only character of colour. And Sofia Coppola said she didn't feel like she could do that character justice, which is fair enough. If you don't think you're going to do that character justice, I'd much rather not see that character than see a stereotypical maid character. But at the same time, that was one thing that I enjoyed about the 71 version was there was a whole dynamic between the maid and the soldier where they're both outsiders in this world. And so they form this kind of uneasy relationship where they're sort of friends and then not friends at the same time. And I think that could have been an interesting thing to add into the mix, but I know that Sophia really wanted to focus on gender issues with this film. Do you remember how they treated the slave? Were they like mean to her, or was she more of like a house slave where they were a lot kinder to her? Do you remember how they portrayed her at all? Yeah, there was some meanness and some stereotypical treatment of the character for that time. But again, just that dynamic I liked.
Yeah, I really, as I said, I really appreciated how, not having seen the 1971 film, I appreciated how, as I said, they're by themselves, and that gives Colin Farrell a reason to stay, is because he's like, oh, you guys need a gardener, and he wants to kind of stay and help out, but of course things start to get a little worse for him, but that was an aspect that I appreciated, is it made this home seem very inviting, but there's one thing that happens in this movie where it stops being so happy there, and it starts to be a lot more creepy. And that brings me to, I don't have a lot of problems with this film, but I definitely have some, and I feel like a lot of those problems that I had were attributed to the marketing of this movie. The trailers made this seem like it was this confined thriller, and this movie definitely does have those moments of suspense, but towards the end of this movie, I really felt like it was a bit anticlimactic, where I think if they would have changed just one or two things about the story, I really would have been into it, but there were just a few aspects of it where I left not as much as on a high note as I would have liked to have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I loved the film, but I did not like the marketing for it. So I saw the trailer, obviously, early. I remember, I think it was on an episode of Screen Junkies Universe. We all watched it, and I was like, that looks great. And yeah, you do go in thinking that this is going to be a real action-packed thriller, and it's going to be a lot more of a cat and mouse game than it actually is. And it's a quieter movie. It's similar to Virgin Suicides in its nature, and a little bit of Marie Antoinette, maybe with the costumes. But it definitely, I then watched the trailer again after I saw the film, and I thought, yeah, they really tried to amp up the pace of it. And you notice when you look at the trailer again that there's shots that they've put together where they're in different costumes, and so they've taken two different scenes and put them together to try to make it look like it's something that it's not, and that's always unfortunate. It's a hard film to market, I would say, and make it look exciting, because it is very slow. It takes its time, and it's quiet.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem. There was another movie that came out this year called It Comes at Night, and I really feel like the trailers mismarketed that movie, but in a way that I feel like if that movie would have been what the trailers have promised, it would have been lesser of a film. And so I don't have a problem with a director making the movie that they want to make, and the trailers totally just trying to sell the movie, but I do feel like the movie that the trailers were selling was a little bit more appealing than what this was, because I love about 80% of this movie, but once that inciting incident happens in this movie, I really feel like it could have been a bit more snappy and a bit more exciting. But that's just me.
Yeah, I didn't feel that so much. I was kind of on the edge of my seat, just wondering what was going to happen. And then I liked the way it all came together at the end. It is a pretty creepy movie overall, but yeah, there's so many layers in here and so much to dissect. And I was going to say, I was going to use like a pun for eating, but I couldn't think of one.
You can't think of one?
So much to digest.
So much to digest. There you go. Overall, I really did enjoy this movie. As I said, I enjoyed 80% of it I loved. I was really curious where it was going, but when it went down that path, I was turned off by it a little bit. But I feel like Sofia Coppola directs like the crap out of this movie. This is such a gorgeous looking film. I love all of the performances, and as I've said many times, this movie has a lot of depth to it that could just be taken for face value, but I really feel like upon rewatching this movie, there's going to be some subtleties that are hinted towards at the beginning of the film that really pay off once you watch it once or twice, or once or twice more.
Yeah, I feel the same. I really enjoyed the power dynamic in the film. I love the way it's about female power, and it plays on the gender roles a lot. I thought it was gothic and cool and interesting to watch. There was times when I wanted to pause it and just check out the framing because it looks so beautiful. So I can't wait to see it again. And The Beguiled is one of my favorite films that I've seen this year. Speaking
of female empowerment, you have a book coming out. I believe it's August 15th. Is that right?
Yes. Just got the confirmed publishing date of August 15. It's called Backwards and in Heels, and it is about the history of women in Hollywood. And what I've done is I've chosen 4 or 5 stories of women throughout every era of Hollywood, whether they're behind the camera or in front of the camera, and each story illustrates a particular problem or particular accomplishment for women in Hollywood. And then when we get to the present day, then I did a bunch of interviews with cinematographers, writers, filmmakers, actors, talked to Octavia Spencer and America Ferrera and Ava DuVernay and J.J. Abrams and Paul Feig. So there's a bunch in there. I hope that everyone enjoys it. I worked really, really hard on it, and it comes out August 15. But if you go to Amazon, you can pre-order now.
What other websites can you get it besides Amazon? Because I know I've pre-ordered it from Amazon, but where else can people get it?
Yeah, and you did my nice little banner on my YouTube for me, so where it says like Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, IndieBound, and I know that there's a bunch of places around the world as well, and it has different release dates in different countries, but hopefully you can get it around August.
Well, I am very excited to read that. Thank you so much for coming on my show and talking about a movie that you're very clearly in love with, and a movie that is probably going to be on your top 10 favorites of the year.
It will definitely. Thank you so much for having me. I always love talking to you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for watching today. Have you seen The Beguiled? What did you think about it? Leave your thoughts and opinions down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you liked today's video. And if you did, click on the link down below, subscribe to my channel, some more reviews and related things. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.